Okay, so we've been going through this series of lessons called The Church That Weathers. And I've been assigned the topic talking about the church that weathers throwaway culture. I find it kind of interesting because not too long ago, actually it's probably maybe it was actually 2 years ago, but it's gone by quickly, we preached a lesson where we encouraged people to get rid of stuff. We talked about Marie Kondo, you remember that question, does it bring me joy? Sometimes we've accumulated these things in our life that don't actually bring us joy. They bring us burdens and distractions, and we should shed some of those things. And here I'm talking about how we shouldn't throw things away. Maybe we've bought too much into this throwaway culture to our detriment. Like all of the messages that are preached from this pulpit, actually all the messages that you're given, we are always required to exercise wisdom. It's hard to preach a message that is going to be absolutely true all the time, in every context, in every situation. That's not the truth. That's not true. We need to exercise wisdom when we're thinking through and discerning things. Sometimes it is good to throw things away. Hebrews 12 actually says, let us cast aside every weight and sin that clings so tightly and entangles us and run the race with endurance. We should shed some of these things that are holding us back. Jesus just said we're supposed to deny ourselves, cast ourselves away in regard, take up our cross and follow him. So sometimes we should throw things away. Sometimes we shouldn't. But today we want to talk about the throwaway culture. How much, just a guess, how much waste do you think you produce every year? How much of your rubbish goes to a landfill every year? Does someone want to throw out a guess?
100 kilos.
100 kilos?
More like
Half a ton? 2 tons. I've got 2 tons. I hear 1 ton of you. Do I hear 1.5 tons?
Does this include green waste?
Yeah, so our government, there's a big initiative. They've recognized how much waste fills up our landfills. And there's big initiatives to try to manage that so we're not throwing away so much stuff that it's going to be, an unmanageable risk to us. And so they, introduce green waste bins, hopefully, so that they will compost and sell. We pay them to take our green waste that they compost and sell back to us. Government's not stupid. And we've introduced, food scraps. A third of our rubbish is food, and that's just wasting space in those landfills. So they introduced these food scrap bins to help, manage that waste. So 2 tons was the biggest guesstimate. 3.3 tons per New Zealander on average every year goes into our landfills. We throw away a lot of stuff. What's your favorite animal? Chickens? Oh, because they're tasty? Yeah? What's your favorite animal? Bacon? Okay. What'd you? An eagle. Yeah, those are majestic birds, aren't they? Anyone else want to? Jaguars. Yeah, those are cool. Giraffe. Ah, 2 of them. Yeah, those are so interesting. They're like, apparently, when a giraffe is born, its heart doesn't start beating until it drops on the ground and impact kicks it off. Isn't that interesting? Man, giraffes are one of the silliest and coolest animals that God's created. Did you know they're expected to go extinct in the wild in my son's lifetime? They're a critically endangered species. And do you know why they're going extinct? Habitat's being destroyed. People are pulling down their habitat and planting farms and chasing them to more remote areas. They're being poached for their skins, for their meat, and they're critically endangered. And in my son's lifetime, at this rate, they're going to go wild. They're going to go extinct in the wild. Orca. They're so cool, those things. They are at the top of the food chain in the sea, and so that means all the waste and the chemicals that get introduced into the food webs in the ocean ends up in their fat and in them. There's a chemical known PCB, which is really popular because it was used in a lot of our products that we made. Comes to find out it's super toxic and it doesn't break down, and so it accumulates in food webs. And now orca, at the top of the food chain, they say, like in seals they've studied, and a seal's reproductive rate almost stops when there's 67 parts per million of this PCBs in their fat. And on average, when they find killer whales or orcas, they find about 83 parts per million. So they're not able to reproduce as well. And on top of that, a lot of salmon populations, a lot of the foods, they're collapsing because of overfishing or pollutants, environment's changing. And so there's only 19 different populations or groups of orca in the world, and that's going down and down and down. There's one population in the Gulf of Mexico that 30 years ago was like 730 orca in the Gulf of Mexico, and now there's 22. Man. And a lot of this is because of humanity's utter disregard and careless thought towards the first thing God called humanity to protect. Mark preached a lesson a while ago. He introduced us to a word called, maybe you've heard of it, it's called kaitiakitanga. Do you know what that means? Do you remember what that is? Protector or guardian. It's a steward over something. When God created humanity, when God created everything and called it as good, and then God created humanity and put him over creation to, it says in some, to dominate or to subdue it. I don't think God's calling humanity over creation to exploit it and abuse it. I think he's calling humanity over creation to manage it, to cultivate it, to take care of it, to protect it. Actually, if you read the Genesis account of creation, God planted a garden, and it was beautiful and lush and filled with life. But do you know how the rest of the world was described? Barren and void. For two reasons. God hadn't caused it to rain yet, to water it, and water is vital to life. But also man wasn't there to cultivate it. God had called man to take, like what he did in the garden, and spread that good, fill the earth with that goodness. And do you know what mankind has filled the earth with? Plastic. We filled the earth with plastic. Maybe it's not a normal message, coming from a pulpit. It's not what you'd expect to hear on a Sunday morning. Maybe it's not what you would expect when Jesus calls you to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow him. But I do want to say, and it's 100% true, God thinks his creation is good. God has called you to take care of his creation. Think about what you consume. John talked about consumerism a couple weeks ago. And think about what you waste. Think about the effect your lifestyle, your choices, your actions have on the environment. Consider other people's actions on the environment and ask yourself, should I do something about that? I was reading some of the statistics and surveys that the government has done over the years to tackle waste, and they've been doing surveys to investigate people's perceptions of littering and stuff like that. And I was reading just some feedback from some surveys they did up in Auckland, and they'd sit in these public spaces and they just count and tally up, how many times they see someone littering, and people were just dropping something on the ground. And a A lot of times it would be in spaces where there weren't rubbish bins. Maybe people just throw it on the ground because there isn't the opportunity to manage it well, and they don't want to hold on to it to take care of it. One day they observed like 1,790 instances of littering. That's a lot in one day, actually. I know there's a lot of people there. 95% of the litter was cigarette butts. Just a little thing that they don't think about. They finish it, done with it, chuck it. And when they went and they tried to follow up, as they saw someone littering, and I know this would have been, a lot of red faces, they'd follow up and ask them, okay, we're surveying littering, why did you litter? And about half of the people that, chucked out a cigarette butt, I didn't litter. What are you talking about? They're in denial, they don't want to own up to it. I don't know. I just want to encourage all of us to own up to the impact we had, the negative impact we have on the environment. And if there's anything that we can do about it, change it. Change those habits, change those actions. Be mindful of it. Okay, part B, because that actually isn't the main focus of my sermon, but I think it is worth saying because we do live in a culture of waste, of a throwaway culture. It's been ingrained on us. It's been marketed towards us to get rid of the useless things that we have, the old things that we have, the slow things that we have, the dirty things we have, and get something new and exciting. So it's being impressed on us to not value those things we have, but instead desire and want something that they have to sell us on sale. That's consumerism. I'm going to be navigating two things, so bear with me. It says John's sermon a few weeks ago, back on consumerism. It's our society's push to convince all of us that all the world has to offer is offered to us for our good, for our pleasure. And if you want it, you should get it. Anyone know there's a song by Ariana Grande? It's an interesting, but the whole song is this highlighting this lavish, extravagant lifestyle, and it's articulating the pill that the world is being forced to swallow, that if you want it, well, here the song is like, I want it, I got it. 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 You like my hair? Gee, thanks, just bought it. I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it. No, this whole song, actually, my son was in a production the other night at Bay Court, and there was an underlying message in there, just this humanity's pull towards greed and wanting things to help self, and in the end, actually it becomes destructive. And it destroys the things that are actually valuable and important to you, and it leaves you wanting for more, never satisfied. But we still think, if I just have more, then I'll be happy. If I see it and I like it, I want it, I got it. As Ariana Grande said. Quick question. How is value determined? How do you decide? I looked this up, and the first way to find out how much something is worth is to jump online and get onto eBay, and the internet will tell you how much something is worth. I think that's interesting. I have to have someone else tell me how much something is worth to me. Okay, I am not an economist. I don't have my mind wrapped around how financial systems work all across the board. It is a science. It is huge. I don't know if anyone's got it all figured out. But value is determined by multiple factors. You have to consider supply and demand. How much labor was involved in producing it? Is there intrinsic value to something? How much did it cost to create? Is there sentimental value? But the number one factor that determines value is how much someone's willing to pay for it. Our houses, how much is your house worth to you right now? Is it worth the amount that the government tells you it's valued at? Is that how much it's worth? Is it the sum total of all the materials used to build it, plus the labor that it took to build it? Is it worth the total of what it cost to build 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Or is it worth what it would cost to build now? It's worth whatever someone is willing to pay for it. I remember a few years ago, as our housing market just started going up and up and up and up, and it was going crazy. And do you remember why it was the reason people were saying it was becoming so expensive? Fear of missing out. That was driving one thing. Get it now before I lose it, before it's get out of my price range. Yeah. I remember one thing, it was all these foreigners coming in and buying all our properties, and we changed laws to accommodate for it. And I read this article, and I was convinced of that for a while. I read this article, and it was a person's perspective. It's like everyone is blaming these foreigners that are coming in with money and buying houses, and that definitely affects it. But, the New Zealanders are choosing to sell it for that much as well. They don't have to take the highest bidder. They don't have to sell it for as much as they can to get as much as they can. Supply, demand, labor, all of those laws of economics are real, but at the end of the day, something is only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And the scary thing is, our society does a scary good job at convincing people to value things that really aren't valuable and throw away things that are. Aristotle put forward or posed this paradox. It's called the water-diamond paradox. Maybe you've heard this before. Because why is it that water, which is vital for all life, is so cheap, while diamonds are expensive, even though we can live without them? It's interesting because diamonds have use. There is a use and a worth and a value to diamonds. But if I never touch a diamond in my life, I'm not going to die. But if I never have water in a month, I will die. So why is it that water, which is so vital, is cheap, but diamonds are so expensive? Now I know there is cost and there's multiple factors in there, but that's just a paradox that was determined. Do you know in New York City there was a diamond store that the people who were employees accidentally threw out some diamonds? $5 million worth of diamonds. They just threw it away. They didn't realize it, of course, it wasn't on purpose, but luckily a security guard found them. But unluckily for that security guard, he was found trying to sell them on the black market. You'll never find water on the black market, though. I don't know. No, you won't. How is value determined? Everyone has a smartphone, right? Was it 2007 or 6 that Apple came out with their iPhone? It revolutionized the world, Apple was the first U.S. company to reach a market value of $1 trillion in 2018. And then 2 years later, they reached $2 trillion. And now they're sitting at more than $3 trillion. And if you were going to Google, what are companies to invest in, Apple is still one of the top because they're expected to keep growing. Is it because they invented this, my phone's in my pew, because they invented this device, this phone, that helps us connect to information just in our palm of our hand? Is it because they connected us to each other? Is it they connected us to easier access to entertainment? Is it because of the speed and the power and the potential in our hands? Is it because of the photos that we can get, the moments that we can capture and share with people? Is it because they invented this amazing device? No, not really. That's it. It's because they convince you that they do it every year. And they've done it with a tablet. And they've done it with a laptop. And they've done it with a computer. And your old one is slow. It was good, but it's not as good. It was fast, but it's not as fast. It was sleek, but now it's a little bit clunky. We have something for you. And I'll tell you what, you can just, instead of throwing your whole old phone away, just sell it to us. Or we'll give you a discount on a new phone. And then they take your old phone and they turn around and sell it to someone else, telling them this is better than what you have. No, they're rich because they've convinced us that they have something better and what we've had is not good enough anymore. Now they are over a $3 trillion company. They're not the only company to do that. Not at all. That's how marketing works. They want you to be in discontent with what you have and buy their products, convincing you that what you want is what they have, not what you have. And what they have will make you happy. You shouldn't be happy with what you already have. Here's where I think this is important to us. I appreciated John's message on stewardship, on consumerism, on the idea that the abundance of life, the value of life doesn't consist in the abundance of wealth. Luke 16 tells us, whoever can be trusted with small things can also be trusted with big things. Whoever is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in big things too. If you cannot be trusted with the worldly riches, you will not be trusted with true riches. There is a relationship between how we manage, how we consume, how we use, how we steward our physical possessions, and a relationship with how we manage, how we engage, how we steward our relationships. I had a conversation with someone not too long ago. This girl came to Olivia and I just for some advice. She had a close friend who was about to get engaged, and she did not like that guy. A lot of red flags showing up. She shared some of the details of the relationship. He seemed to be a little bit manipulative and controlling, deceitful, and her friend was blind to it, and there was a lot of red flags. And she told us about this guy. He moved to this city and to be closer to the girl, which sounds sweet, and he went to find a job there. And in 2 months, he was there for 2 months, and 7 different jobs in a 2-month period. He'd find a job, and within the week, they don't pay enough. It's too hard. It's too easy. I don't like the boss. I don't like the work I'm doing. I don't like the people I'm working with. Get rid of it. Go find something different. Looking for that perfect job that's going to tick all the boxes and bring him happiness in his career. And that raised a lot of red flags to this girl. Why? Do you catch why this was raising flags? Yeah. Eh? That's it. If that's the character, if that's how this guy treats those commitments, those things, how is he going to treat his relationship? First time they have a fight. First time they disagree about something. When they're angry about something. Is he just going to chuck it away? No. How we steward and manage the physical things we have has a bearing and is related to the non-physical things that we have. Well, I think this conversation on a throwaway culture is important. So I think our world has been sucked into the lie that we should cast aside what we have and go after the next big thing. And 100% believe this approach to our physical possession is transferred into our relationships with people. Consumerism has fed a beast in humanity, it is perfectly okay devouring and consuming people. Exploitation is nothing to blink an eye at. You guys remember about a month, just over a month ago, right now actually, there was that sub that was going down to the Titanic. Huge, and I think there was 5 people on board, and like an hour or so into the dive, they started going down onto the Titanic, and all communications was lost. And they had all the Coast Guards and military and all these different private companies, all these people coming in, and there were planes flying everywhere, and they're scouring, looking for these people in hopes that they would find them, and especially because the air was running out, The, did you guys hear about the boat in the Mediterranean off the coast of Greece that same week? Because when I opened up my feeds, I think I saw 1 or 2 articles on it, but mainly it was always live updates of this search for these 5 people. And not really a lot of attention given to this boat. There was a boat leaving Libya, headed to Greece, filled with refugees, people fleeing, mainly from Pakistan. This boat had a passenger limit of about 100 people. And so the smugglers crammed about 750 people on board. Approximately, they don't know exactly the numbers because there's not a documentation, and if there's a space, they're going to shove someone in there. If you hear accounts of people that survived, and there were survivors, of the 750 estimated, there was about 114 people that were rescued from it. A couple hundred Pakistani people died. The largest death of, like a single incident death of Pakistanis in their history. If you hear about the stories of some of the survivors, they were just herded in there. Basically cargo, shoved into containers and put in there. There was no space. People were fighting over water, just having to go to the toilet where they were standing, lower decks, couldn't move around or anything. Those smugglers had no regard for those people, and even our news had little regard for those people. But to the smugglers, it was all about the money, the money, the money, you know? Get one more person on there. There's no room. It doesn't matter. Get one more person. 100 passenger boat, 750 people on there. That's just ridiculous. But there was no problem exploiting a person. They didn't matter. It just mattered to get that money. You guys, I'm sure, have seen all these scams that go around. Seems like, you know, every time I jump onto my bank or any of these, there's the warning that there's scams, you know. And has anyone not received an email or a phone call that they know is a scam? Yeah, I didn't ask like who has, because I'm pretty sure it would be the minority that hasn't received it. And you see, I get in my YouTube feeds, I get all these like, you know, videos of people hacking the scammer, like call centers and into their cameras and stuff, and watching and raiding. But they just have, like, there's these groups, these rooms that are filled with people, and all day, every day, all they do is get on the phone and they call people. And they weave this web of lies and deceit and trying to, they don't care about the person. They don't care that this is an old lady who has been saving her whole life so that they don't care that if she gives up this money, she's not going to have enough money to live on. They just want it. And they scam people out of so much money. There was an article in the Herald was it this morning? Or yes, sometimes I lose track of time. I think it was this morning. There was a guy that was getting on some of those dating websites, and he connected with some Kiwi women, and you know, talking to them, and you know, this relationship is developing, and then he had to go to Dubai to take care of some family business, and his grandfather had died, and they had this estate, but he needs some money just to pay some lawyers and to sort out. It's like $5 million is what he's expected to get. If you can send some money. So this one lady, you know, she sent him $200,000 and borrowed $75,000 from some friends and sent it to him. And then he's gone. Come to find out, like, he's being investigated by Interpol, and they're suspecting that he's involved with about $45 million of fraudulent activity, all the money that's coming to him. Utter disregard for a person. They're just there to exploit for my advantage. They're just trash in my eyes, a means to an end, a way to get what I want. Because I believe in the lie of the world that what I want is worth it. Everything else is worthless. I'm going to share a couple things. I got 3 things. This isn't like exhaustive. This isn't even complete list, but just maybe 3 things to consider, just to hold on as you're overwhelmed with this message of you want it, if you see it, you like it, you want it, get it. That will lead you towards not caring about whatever it costs to get it, including people, relationships. So I might just share 3 things that might help you. Something to hold on to, something to remember. First thing, people are priceless. If I die, so I'm, working with the military, if I'm on active duty and I die, Defense Forces decided I'm about $300,000 should cover my life. Give it to Olivia. No, we're worth more than that, but that's a sum that will help compensate for the loss of David. Olivia, here you go, $300,000. That's all I'm worth, yeah. In 2016, a toddler fell into an enclosure in the Cincinnati Zoo, into a gorilla enclosure. There was 3 gorillas in there, 2 females and 1 silverback male, and this little toddler climbed the fence and fell into the water, splashing around. The zookeepers, noticing it, quick to act, they jump in and they call the gorillas in. 2 females, they come, back into the cage, but the male, he's very curious and he wanted to investigate. So he goes over and he, grabs the child, and for 10 minutes, he's like standing the kid up, dragging him around, climbing with him for 10 minutes. That gorilla, the Cincinnati Zoo brings around $50 million a year in revenue from visitors coming to it. And the large attraction is the gorillas because they breed them there and they have a great enclosure there. So that money probably, that gorilla probably has a greater positive economic impact to Cincinnati than that kid would. It's a breeding program there. And there's not a lot of gorillas, so every gorilla that's a part of that program is significant and can add a huge contribution to the population of gorillas on this planet. There's billions of people in there. That kid's probably only going to have like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kids. I don't know if he's going to have a great contribution towards, humanity as far as numbers go. But after it became apparent that gorilla was posing a significant risk to that child and there was no way to rescue that child, the zookeepers grabbed a rifle, 1 shot, took that gorilla out. There's no hesitation. Any other action would be absurd. What, leave the gorilla just to kill the child? The gorilla is more significant than the child? No, that doesn't make sense. Why? Because people are priceless. Cost-benefit analysis, I think some of you have heard of that. Any endeavor, any decision, you have to decide, what is this going to cost me in time, labor, reputation, and how is this going to benefit me? And you kind of weigh it up, and if the benefit in your eyes is greater than the cost, then you make that decision. And I just want to tell you, when you're taking into consideration a decision that involves a person, the value and that worth of that person is priceless. Don't think they're expendable, you can exploit them, that you shouldn't care about them. They are valuable. Now I'm mindful of this because not only for you to look at other people as valuable, worthless, or full of worth, that idea that we're only worth what we can contribute to society or to our relationships or to our families is a lie. Your worth isn't inherent in what you produce or make or provide. Your worth is because, what is it? You're only worth what someone is willing to pay for you. And the creator of all things, it was worth it to him to give up everything to purchase you. I know in this room, we do have some people who have been close to suicide, whether it's themselves, a family member, or a friend. And I know a lot of people are brought to that point because they believe they're worthless. They're not worth people's time. People don't care about them. And that is a lie. If you ever begin to think, I'm not worth it, remember you are. And remember there is at least this room of people that would argue with you and tell you, no, you're priceless. Next thing to hold on to, next thing to remember, your presence in a person's life is significant. I think I've told you some of this before. Part of my story of faith growing up as a teenager, moving here to New Zealand, and I think this is a problem with teenagers across the world. They don't feel like they fit in, and so they try to become something so that they can be accepted by a community. They just want to be accepted. They want to be welcomed. They want to feel like they have a place with people. And so as a teenager, like my endeavor was, I looking back at it, it seemed like every year, even less than a year, I was like that guy hopping from, job to job. I was hopping from like friend group to friend group, just finding where do I fit? And every time I jumped to a new friend group to figure out do I fit there, I in essence became a different person. I adopted different style, different, language, different style, different clothing, different hair. I don't even remember I had cornrows in my hair for like a week. Like, what is that? I came to a point later on as an early adult where I was alone, and I was reflective, and I was trying to evaluate, because I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I realized actually a lot of people that I had spent a lot of energy trying to impress onto my life anymore. So why did I spend all that energy to try to be like them? It was so temporary. And I just reflected of all the people that came and went, in my life. Through all my time of experimentation, the consistent people that were in my life was this church. No matter like what I wore, what I did, I'd come here and I was always welcomed and loved. People cared about me, asked what I was doing, asked, what are you doing with your hair? I saw it, I like it, I want my hair. Gee, thanks, I bought it. Yeah. No, but just the presence of the people in this church community, that continual presence in my life had a huge impact on me in my faith. Your presence in someone's life can have huge significance to them. The problem is sometimes people are difficult and we don't always want to be in their life. Sometimes it's easier to walk away from a person, especially if we believe the value of that relationship is only what it provides for me. But we as Christians are called to be more than that. Not just to love the people that are easy to love, not just to love our friends. Jesus calls us even to love our enemies. What is it to love just the people that love you? Even tax collectors, Gentiles, they do the same. No, we're to be like our Father who loves everyone, who sticks with them through thick and thin, even if they're being pushed away. So my encouragement is don't give up on the people in your life, most especially the difficult people in your life, because your presence in their life can be significant. The other side of that coin is actually your presence in their life is significant to you. It can be easy to disregard, to cast aside, to ignore someone. They're just scenery in my life as I'm walking along. In essence, they don't have real value in my life. But when you sit down and talk to someone, as you listen to their story, as you hear how they tick, as you try to perceive how they view the world, they become more valuable to you. You connect with them on a deeper level. It has a huge impact on you as well. My encouragement to you is to take the time to be present with people and be significant. Last thing, faith, hope, and love. Nigel Reynolds was the first journalist ever to interview J.K. Rowling, writer of Harry Potter. When she wrote the book Philosopher's Stone, he was the first journalist to have an interview with her. And as thanks, J.K. Rowling gave him a first edition copy of Harry Potter. There was a bit of, hoopla, and that's your word, John, hoopla and hype around this Harry Potter book, but Nigel wasn't convinced. He was pretty sure it was going to be a flop, so he was like, thanks, J.K., and he threw the book away. You know how much those first edition Harry Potter books are going right now? About $100,000. and he just threw it away. Because he didn't think it was worth it. We don't live for today. We live today for tomorrow. Our perspective should always be forward. Reflecting on the past is great, but know that that reflection is to help us keep our trajectory forward into the promises of God. So when we look at people, we don't look at them as they were yesterday. We don't even really look at them as they are today. We look for who God is shaping them into tomorrow. We have faith that God is bringing around the greatest good for that person. We have hope knowing that God will make it so. And love is the action that we take every day, one step at a time. Our culture's priorities are not our priorities. Following after the goals and the values of this world will not lead us into the joy and happiness and relationships that are fulfilling. Instead, they'll leave us feeling discontent, disconnected, and alone. Be a good kaitiakitanga of what God has given to you. Be content with what you have and find value in the place and people God has called you to. All people, you included, are valuable. Your presence through thick and thin is powerful. Be steadfast, waiting for God's promises in your life and the lives of others. Cherish all of God's blessings. They are worth holding on to.